Hi, welcome to Platform Inspires. My name's Fiona Nearon-John. I hope you guys are really well. Thank you for being here. I never thought I would be making an episode during lockdown. To be honest with you, I didn't think I knew how to. Bringing everybody together, the filming, the editing, wow. I had an Instagram live with Inspiring Vanessa at the beginning of lockdown, and she'd asked me, what can we expect from Platform Inspires? And I said, I don't know, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens, because we were just going into the lockdown, and then all of a sudden this happened. George Floyd, I'll say your name. And then we have the Black Lives Matter global movement. This is incredibly important to my life, but we'll get into that another time. I contacted some of my young people that I've had the great good fortune of meeting on Platform Inspires. I then got introduced to two gentlemen. The 8 of us have come together, and we are talking about how we move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Platform Inspires.
The term white privilege, obviously it's a term that's been around for a long time, but it's something that I've really started to study and engage with more recently. I just wanted to see from your perspectives how you've experienced this in your work lives, like white privilege.
What's happening now is my life. I've gone through this, you know, I've experienced institutional racism. But what I liked when I heard about an explanation of white privilege is, white privilege does not mean that you are not broke. It doesn't mean you're poor. It doesn't mean that your home isn't great, or it doesn't mean any of those things. What it means is that when you step out of your door in the morning, you will not be judged, looked at weirdly, or any of those sorts of things because of the melanin of your skin. Does everyone agree with me? Is that what because this is, you know, we're all learning on this together, because I'm learning as well, you know, because these terms are being put in people's lives and they're expected to understand what they mean.
To kind of take a perspective, certainly from life within policing, then I think one of the issues, you know, just pick it with your heading, then I think the lack of representation. I have very strong views around positive action. What I mean by that is supporting people from underrepresented groups to get to the interview process. Yeah, because if they're not getting to the interview process, then to use your heading white privilege, then that board, that chief officer team, that senior leader is always going to remain white, isn't it? Predominantly white themselves. Then I think, as with all of us on this screen, you have to do it on your own merits once you're there. But I don't think enough people are getting an opportunity to get there.
From the privileged point of view, you have to put yourself in other people's shoes, right? So you look at me in terms of, yeah, look, I've had a great upbringing, I've got great parents, I'm white, right? How would I feel about being a young black person in Britain? It's about perspective and understanding other people's points of view.
That's fantastic. Thank you for all of your answers.
Welcome to Platform Inspires. Travell Henry and Nick Inge. It is amazing to have you guys on our show. Thank you for being here.
No problem at all. It's great to be here. Bye.
Hi, Fiona. Thanks for inviting us along. It's brilliant to be on board.
Amazing. So, gentlemen, we are in a worldly pandemic. We are in a worldly uprising. You could not have chosen a better time to bring your company out called Worldly Wise. I think we all want to be wise moving forward. So congratulations, really excited. And this is the reason you're on Platform Inspires. Contain yourself, Fiona. Let's talk worldly wise and just let the audience kind of catch up, because everyone knows about the worldly pandemic. Everyone knows about the worldly uprising with Black Lives Matter, which we will talk about both of those issues a little bit further. But let's talk about worldly wise first. So, am I right in saying that it's going to be a website where you can go to, young people can go to find advice, guidance, encouragement, support on an array of subjects? Am I right in saying that? I'm going to go to Nick first and then we'll go to Travell. So Nick, tell us a bit about Worldly Wise.
Yeah, absolutely, Fiona. Lovely to meet you. Yeah, Worldly Wise is under development as a website as we speak. It's going to be a free resource for schools and organisations for young people to access, to get worldly wise advice from a whole range of different people with amazing different backgrounds, to say, look, everything's going to be all right in life. That we're in a global pandemic at the minute. It seems like the world's going to end sometimes, but it certainly isn't. There's a positive future. All these people have been on a journey, and they will give you their advice to you as a young person to go, you're going to be fine.
Amazing. And what sort of topics are you going to have covered on Worldly Wise, Travell?
Yeah, certainly. Hi, Fiona. Thank you. Some of the topics we're going to have is things around supporting young school children, let's say around well-being, gap year travel, and we think about traveling to festivals, for example. The current issues, as you mentioned in your introduction there, around COVID and well-being, yeah, and wellness in itself, the whole, around financial backing and support and drugs awareness. Yeah, and to be honest, within the team itself, I mean, you know, as we reach out further afield, and if people have got other topics and areas where we feel we can support them, then we're happy to embrace that and support them in those areas. So it is really developing, you know, even as we speak now.
Amazing, amazing. And why did you develop it? Why did you create Worldly Wise? Nick, what was in your heart?
In my heart is trying to help people. That sounds really cheesy, but if we can help one young person to say, look, when they're in their mid-50s, they go, do you know what? You can be not whatever you want to be, but you can really be positive, and whatever bumps in life you come across, you'll get through them, but you'll be absolutely fine.
Okay, and Travell?
Yeah, and pretty much echoing that really, Fiona, and it really is, and it is about inclusion, you know, and truthfully it's about inclusion, and that might be just somebody feeling involved within the group, but equally if they want to put something across, then they feel empowered to do that in whatever way.
Such a great time for Worldly Wise to be coming out. So once again, thank you for being here. We've got lots to get through today. We've got such exciting things to get through because we are going to be talking about our current situations and how we move forward. We like to go back and we just like to find out a little bit about you. So I'm going to go with Nick first, okay? So Nick, I understand from you that you were born in the UK, British parents, but your father was in the army and you travelled around a lot as a young boy, going to schools, different schools all the time. And you said to me that you were going to a different school every 18 months. How was that? What was life like growing up? Because that's really quite traumatic, I would think.
Well, traumatic or positive, depends on the way you look at it. I mean, I didn't know any different at the time. We moved between Germany and England. That's my dad's job. That's the way it was. I didn't know any different sort of lifestyle. It just was what it was, as it were. If that's the expression, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, difficult, but it gave me the skill set and the character that I am now, I suppose. And you have to make friends. You're forced to make friends. You can't just sit in that sort of friendship group and stay there forever. Yeah, maybe the person I am. Not easy, but I didn't know any different.
And then you went off to, you ended up in a boarding school in Dover, educated yourself. And after kind of doing all your education, you went off and did gap years yourself, didn't you? Where did you travel to?
Well, yeah, I took a gap year after my A-levels. I didn't actually go travelling. I took a couple of jobs and then went to Newcastle Polytechnic. Then I went on another gap year. So I went off to Australia on a one-way ticket, much to my parents' angst probably. Ran out of money after probably drinking too much, dare I say, and then ended up in Hong Kong. Met my wife. I was a cocktail barman. She was a waitress. There's a song there somewhere down the line. Yes, I know I'm not going to sing it for you. And then came back to the UK and ended up with a career in the police, but that's another story. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. After all of that, you ended up spending 25 years in the police force. If you could put that experience of joining the police force, 25 years, into one sentence, who has it made you into? Like your personality, who you are today?
It's made me more confident, more resilient, but far more understanding of other people's backgrounds.
Amazing. Thank you. Wow, I love that. And Travell, you were born and bred in Manchester.
Hi, Fiona. Yeah, I'm a good old northern lad, Manchester born and bred. I'm proud of it.
Amazing. And your grandparents came from Jamaica to the UK in 1954, and your mum came with them at the age of 18. Is that correct?
Yes, my mother and my grandparents all came across from Jamaica back in 1954. My mother was 18, bless her at the time. And then, yeah, I had products from my mother and my father in 1955, born and bred in Manchester, Russia.
What was it like growing up in Manchester?
It was great, honestly. It was, I just remember it was kind of, we were very, very free-spirited with our neighbours up and down. You know, it's kind of rows upon rows of terraced houses, you know, with a back alley or back entry in between. but everybody seemed to know everybody. Everybody's front doors and back doors were open. We were in and out of each other's houses. The parents all knew us, so we could stop off for tea, and it wasn't a problem. It was just treated as the norm. And yeah, some fantastic times, really. And you know, a bit like Nick said, I didn't know any different. That just seemed to be the norm. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Amazing. And then you went and joined the army. Why did you join the army?
Why did I join the army? Well, my interest at school wasn't great. I wasn't naughty, but I wasn't great at school. It was sports and surveying were the only two subjects I was really interested in. So a friend at the time called Tony used to come home. He was in boys' service, a bit like boarding school, so he'd come home quite frequently. And the thing that always stood out with me, he had money in his pocket and he wore fancy clothes. And for me, that was the hook. And having joined the army, I really wanted to travel and play sport. And I'm very fortunate. I've been most places in the world, living in an army tracksuit, playing sport. So achieved those very straightforward aims, all paid for.
Amazing. And then you two met. How long have you known each other?
Trevor might say too long, but I think since 1994, the summer of 94. There you go. So yeah, going on 25 years, 26 years, yeah.
Amazing. With both of your backgrounds, I think it's really important, Nick, you being in the police force for 25 years, and Travell, you having a company that trains people and supports people and advises people on excessive force, when to use it, when not to use it, training the police force. I mean, wow. We are not only talking Worldly Wise, but we have brought in 5 of Platform Inspire's family to ask you questions. So you've met them. We're now showing the audience a great photo of us all together on our Zoom call this week. So without further ado, I am going to let them ask you the questions and I'm going to let you guys answer them. Okay, so here we go.
Inspiring Vanessa is a regular in my life. She's an international award-winning motivational speaker, YouTuber, author. Watch her episode on our channel. During lockdown, Vanessa has been filming bite-sized pieces to support and encourage other young people in lockdown with their mental health.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, Travell. Hi, Nick. My question is, as a biracial 13-year-old girl, in society nowadays, colorism and racism is becoming normalised every single day, unfortunately. So my question is, what is your advice when encouraging the younger generation or young people in general to speak up about the Black Lives Matter movement and call out somebody if they're making a joke of racism?
Hi, Inspiring Vanessa. Nice to meet you and fantastic question. I think one of the key areas I'd probably encourage young Black people regarding speaking up to do is that I look at it from 2 perspectives. One, if a conversation just comes up amongst your friends stroke peers, and you find that perhaps there's something they've said unintentionally might be a little bit offensive. But I would encourage you to have that conversation with them regarding what they just said and their behaviour. And often people say, well, it makes people feel uncomfortable. But I think particularly at this moment in time, and as, you know, and as the Black Lives Matter message is spreading across America, the UK, Australia, and other countries around the world, then I think we need to have those conversations where people feel uncomfortable, because that's where the true learning starts to take place. Yeah? And, you know, to be honest, providing, you know, we're having these conversations with the best of intentions in terms of developing and learning and growing from an outcome, then if somebody feels uncomfortable, and I include myself within that, then that's for me to reflect and do some learning, isn't it, post that conversation? So we certainly need to have those conversations in the first place. I think secondly, the fact that you already have a platform and you're out there and you're spreading the message, inspiring people, then I would encourage you, you know, whether it's through people like myself and Nick and other people, then to get those introductions so you can meet leaders and senior executives and chiefs of other companies where, let's say, there's underrepresentation in those companies and organizations. So again, you can have the audience to further create a greater platform so that you can speak to that particular workforce and encourage them around, i.e. representation, plus anybody from underrepresented groups can be then further inspired by you and your peers on that platform delivering the message. So my encouragement would be, yeah, to speak up and challenge it wherever it may occur.
Yeah, hi, Inspiring Vanessa. Great to meet you and a great question. In my world of work, which is outside Worldly Wise, which is I Trust You Can See, what we do is encourage people to speak up, whether that's about Black Lives Matter or any other issue. It's really hard for people in any walk of life and any background to speak up. I know how difficult it is with my background in the police and what we do in the world of work outside. It's really hard, but if you don't have the courage to speak up or feel brave enough, or working in or live in an environment where you can't really freely express yourself, it's for you to try and change it. You've got a great personality, you've got a great track record of what you're doing already. It's like Travell said, it's a case of having those conversations with people and being brave enough to challenge the status quo, not in a confrontational way, in a really constructive way, so that your message comes across by you as Vanessa, so they see you as a person, and that's really important. But to encourage your peers and friends and everyone else that you can influence and inspire to then have those conversations at the same time.
James Hastings has been my director of photography for over 2 years. Since leaving school, James has been making films. He's passionate about social change. During lockdown, he's been busy editing videos for NHS staff and frontline workers for a song called Strange Old World.
Thanks, Fiona, and nice to meet you, Nick and Travell. My question as a young British white filmmaker is, racism and police brutality has always been a problem, but the Black Lives Matter movement seems to be giving a platform for voices to be heard, expressing a time for change. Some police seem to be using brutal violence to try and stop some of these protests, and my question is, do you think this is the right way for the police to act, using excessive force, and how are the police going to try and help end racism and police brutality moving forward?
James, great question, and look, really inspired by what you do as well. In terms of, look, no one should use any excessive force in regardless of what background or whatever you do is right. Certainly not the police. And nowadays, in the 21st century, everything's filmed, everything gets exaggerated, everything's there on camera, you can see it. It's not for the police to be using, but there's an element where they have to use some sort of force, not excessive force, because that's what they do. They have to control situations. And there's some people on every side that go over the top in every background, right? In terms of the racism element to it, it's for people, certainly the police, to engage with communities and understand where they're coming from, right? So you look at the police, the vast majority are white, male, right? So they're trying to engage with young black people. How does that come across? They're clashing a lot of the time. They've got to understand each other. It's that engagement, that conversation, and that getting to know each other, and that's how it's going to improve. That's the only way it can improve. There's no point just doing this all the time. It's never going to achieve anything.
Hi, James. Great question, and good to meet you. I think there's a couple of things we need to look at here, and try not to kind of repeat exactly what Nick said there. But I think in the first instance, they are the police, and there are times when they may have to use force, but providing they're using force for a greater good or prevent further harm, then I'll put it into the realms of reasonable force. And sorry, forgive me, because as you know, that's what I also do with another hat on. But I think one of the issues comes back to is the fact that, and there's a term that's often used, and it's called living whilst black. Because sometimes, isn't it, when people are challenged, and post that incident of challenge and whether force is used or not, but you could argue there's an element of force used after stopping somebody living whilst black. But when it's kind of reviewed and stripped right down, then the question has to be asked, if the person wasn't black, would that police officer have stopped them? Hence the term living whilst black. But again, I come back to, and I deliberately say this, but we're back to representation, within the police service. We're back to that issue until they have tried to open their doors. I know that from personal experience, but I think more effort needs to go into opening those doors, and further reaching out and engaging, in the I'm going to call it the furthest reach of communities where they're underrepresented within the police service. Because I think until we have a greater representation, then we're always going to have these issues where if somebody looks and appears different in an area where they're not usually seen in that area, then sadly, as we know, linking to your question, James, then wrongly it raises suspicion. So I think, that issue about representation is a key one. Until we have that, and I think these issues are going to keep occurring.
TJ is one of the very reasons I showcase the work Young Urban Arts Foundation do. He did sessions on their bus, producing and writing music, and now he's one of their young ambassadors. Also, he's currently working on his own album as a music producer, music artist, rapper and singer.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, Nick and Travell. Nice to meet you the other day. My question is, as a young black boy growing up in a deprived area like Hackney, we are always targeted by the police and we don't have that many opportunities. and it's linked to stop and searches and police brutality. So how can we as young people build bridges with the police force and get opportunities at the same time and create a better community?
Hi TJ, great to meet you and a great question. I alluded to it before in terms of community engagement with the police and young people. Like I said, the vast majority of the police service are white heterosexual males. That is just how it is. They need to understand where you're coming from, and you've got to understand where they're coming from as well, and talk to each other. Go into the police stations, go and engage with them. Don't just listen to the senior ranks in the police service. Go and speak to the PCs, the PCSOs and the sergeants who are dealing with the people on the street and the issues out there on the street. There's no point senior officers in the police service just talking down to people all the time, saying this is what it's going to be like. You've got to say this is what we want and have that communication. That's the only way it's going to change, mate.
Hi, TJ. And again, another very good question, and it's good to meet you. I think on the back of what Nick has just said there, which I completely concur with, I think, going back to your experiences, which you're referring to there, then if you're stopped by the police, I would encourage you at the time, and understandably, you may not feel comfortable the fact you've been stopped, particularly when you've been doing nothing but going from A to B within the community. But I would encourage you as much as you can to just remain calm in the situation, ask the police officer for his or her or their details, and then particularly with your background and the fact that you inspire a lot of people anyway, use that opportunity to post that incident, to go into the local police station or a different police station, depending how you feel, to raise your concerns around the fact that you were stopped, but equally then to create that platform, to have that conversation, that dialogue, so that those particular officers know how you were feeling at that time, and to try and get some rationale behind why they stopped you. What was their rationale behind them stopping you in that first instance? So I would take that opportunity there. But I say that on the back of what Nick has said as well, because I completely concur with what he said.
Koichi Samuels is the National Youth Division Leader of SGI UK, which is a socially engaged Buddhist movement, the same organisation that brought us Generation Hope in 2018 that Platform Inspires went to.
Thank you so much, Fiona, and great to meet you earlier this week, Nick and Travell. And my question comes from a Buddhist perspective. In the important Buddhist scripture called the Lotus Sutra, there is a particular character called Bodhisattva, never disparaging. He bows in reverence to anyone he encounters out of deep respect for their life. He is sometimes attacked verbally or physically. When that happens, he removes himself to a safe distance and bows again. What this story teaches us is the Buddhist way of learning to respect all people. We believe that by many people doing this, we will achieve a more peaceful world. In your work and experience, what do you see as the role of respect for others towards changing society?
Hi, Koichi. That is a really good question, and good to meet you. I think the first thing we've got to do for everybody is, and if we look at it from underrepresented groups, Black people, because that's been the theme of a lot of the questions, then really we've got to create that belief on the back of this movement that there's going to be change. Because I think without the belief, then the things we're talking about here are going to be difficult to achieve. And the belief becomes perception, doesn't it? And, if we perceive it, we believe it, it's real, etc. Those factors come into play. Then I think with that then, and though, you made the reference to the reverence, how we want to do that may vary amongst different cultures. But I think the point I'm coming to, though, is that, as you say, that acknowledgement around difference as well. Because whilst I respect the fact that, people may bow, but then certain cultures may misread that, and if we go back to people seeing people paying due deference unnecessarily to people, and people then use it in the wrong way, But I think that acknowledgement, though, the fact that with that belief comes then, if we create that belief that there's going to be change and increase in inclusion and representation, then I think it'll become more, I don't want to say easier, but I think people are more acceptance of the fact that we've got different views, we've got different opinions, as you say, whether it's physically or whether it's psychologically, metaphorically, to take that pace back, and assess and agree to disagree with themselves from there, and then maybe when it's more appropriate on whatever platform to have that engagement around the difference, because as we know from a day-to-day perspective, sometimes that engagement in the moment when we become emotional, with respect, we're only going to see the problem from our point of view, not the other person's point of view. But, but we're talking much deeper than that is what I'm trying to get to. But I think it's that acknowledgement of difference. But I think the belief that the fact things are going to change, without that, I think it's very difficult to achieve this.
Yeah, Koichi, really great question. I echo everything that Travell has said. Respect and reverence and positivity has to be the three buzzwords in taking Black Lives Matter forward. Everyone has to put themselves in the position of someone else, that no society is inherently violent or wants to create angst and conflict. They don't want to. Love thy fellow human, and let's be positive. But put yourself in someone else's shoes. How do they feel as a young black male, as a young black female, stepping out of their house, being looked at as that person, and then being stop checked or whatever it might be, right? How would they feel, right? And from these people who talk about white privilege or whatever, right? From a white person's perspective, how would you feel as that black young person going into the street and then getting stop checked by a police officer? I've got a 17-year-old son. If he'd been stop checked 30 times going to school in the last year, how would I feel? I know how I'd feel. I'd be down at the police station complaining, right? But it's understanding that, right? And putting yourself in someone else's shoes, not fighting about it, not arguing, but going, look, do you know what? We might agree to disagree, but let's move forward in a positive way. And that's the only way we're going to change it.
I met Ishan Shah last October when he won a Global Youth Award. Ishan is committed to raising awareness of slavery and human trafficking in a way that young people can engage in. And at the age of 14, he founded Stolen Dreams.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Hi, Nick. Hi, Travell. It was great to meet you the other day. As a British Indian and as a young person living in society today, my question to you would be, what are the next steps that the police force has to take in order to eradicate systematic and institutionalised racism that exists in the UK? And also, how can we as young people not only put pressure on the police force to carry out these steps, but also provide them with support and help in order to do so?
Hi, Ishan. Great question and really lovely to meet you. In my personal experience, having been a police officer, I can tell you that my training started out in 1994. I had 2 years worth of training. And apart from that, in terms of diversity and any ongoing training and any real positive engagement with young black people, it really disappeared in 1996, 97. It needs to be an ongoing process through the police service, because if you don't, you basically forget what you learned. It's in the background, but it has to be an ongoing, evolving process. That's, like I say, from the PC, PCSO, right through to the senior leadership rank level. And it has to be a two-way thing. So if you want to help make positive change, you have to create uncomfortable conversations with senior leadership teams within police services to say, we're engaging with you. This is what we can offer you. We want to engage with you, and for them to respond. If they don't respond, then you have to start making a case to say, we've engaged, they haven't. And then the ball's in their court, and then embarrass them into change and engaging with you. That's the only way it is going to change.
Yeah. Hi, Ishan. Great question. And again, good to meet you. I'd like to do it from two perspectives. One, we think about police training, their induction training. And as part of that induction training, they have secondments. So those secondments, which used to be 2 weeks, not necessarily back to back, but it gives them, doesn't it, a little bit of integration into that community area and people, and gets a little bit more understanding around difference and why people act and behave in a different way, but still want the same outcome, i.e. to provide support and understanding. So I think certainly that's one area, but I think the second area comes in where the police themselves need to make people outside of the police aware of, there are groups intern, like the Independent Police Advisory Group, yeah, the support groups like the National Black Police Association, yeah, and also the staff representative groups. Yeah, so people like yourself, Ishan, can come in, meet those groups and have those conversations with those groups so that they can perhaps advise you how to couch your conversation and get a little bit more comfortable regarding the message you want to get across. Because I acknowledge, like all of us, at times, you know, we're sitting there having an audience with somebody for the first time, and we know what we want to say, but because we're trying to read that person's body language, we may not present the message in the same way, you know. And these groups, they should be the, you know, they should be the conscience and the critical friends for the police, and they should see them in that way. Otherwise, as it stands, not, you know, with the police in particular, because that's the theme we're on, then, you know, we've got the police internally reviewing the police, and why are we surprised at the outcome?
Thank you so much for answering those questions. They were extraordinary questions. Nick, how did you feel?
They were extraordinary questions, Fiona. I felt really uncomfortable, to be honest. Honestly, really uncomfortable. It made me think about my view of the world, and I've never really questioned myself like those questions. Honestly, were really, really testing questions. And like I say, it's just I don't know, a given, I suppose, in my life. I've never looked at it like that before, but fantastic, fantastic. And those young people need to take those questions further to people who can really influence the police service and make real change.
Amazing. And Travell?
Coaches was interesting.
Yeah, right. Was. Because it's coming from that fundamental place of what he practices and what he believes, you know, which is incredible.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I found the questions, I didn't feel uncomfortable with the questions, but what I did find very interesting though, and, I'm just hearing Nick's feedback there, but just for him and I in context, as we travel around and Worldly Wise grows, then, we may have some more informed discussions for both of us in terms of just learning on both sides as well.
Because that's what it does, doesn't it? When you have these really profound conversations that are fundamentally going to change a system that has been in place for so long, it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, rightly so. That's why there should be a debate. That's why we should keep this thing going.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. When can we expect to see Worldly Wise? When's it going to be accessible for young people to tap into it and benefit from it?
Well, everything's under development at the minute. The courses are being developed, they're being written and filmed as we speak. It's now the beginning of July. A few months' time, we'll all be ready to go.
How excited are you?
We are, yeah, incredibly excited. It's the wow factor. And there are still people contacting us outside of the website as well. I mean, we are offering programs to people as well. So it's just evolving all the time.
I always ask my audience to share a nugget. Now, I know, Nick, you've talked about being positive a lot, and a lot of people may struggle to kind of feel that positivity a lot in their lives. So what would your nugget be to share with our audience in the world that we're in right now?
This is my bit of worldly wise advice to young people, right? Not from an old man talking down to them, but this is what I've gone through in my journey, right? I used to be not as confident as I am now, quite shy and retiring, but I've always been an optimist. If you want to change the world and change yourself, you have to think and train yourself to think in a positive mindset. Right, with BLM, Black Lives Matter, you have to keep that conversation going.
Fabulous. Travell?
Most people in this world are good people who mean and intend well. I truly believe that. But, we have to have that belief, and having that belief be empowered then to move forward, and develop and aspire to whatever it is we want to do. But only oneself can best help oneself. People can support us, but we have to do it ourselves.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on Platform Inspires. Thank you for sharing all of your worldly advice. We're super excited for Worldly Wise. Please keep in contact with us. We want to just part of the Platform Inspires family now. It's been amazing having you here. And until the next time, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.